Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Welcome, everyone, to another virtual town hall meeting. I am Mark Sherwood, 2022 gubernatorial candidate for Oklahoma. On behalf of my wonderful wife, who I kindly refer to as not just my spare rib, but my wonderful, beautiful prime rib, we welcome you. Thanks for being here with us tonight. And there's many places you could have been, and we understand that. So thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. Tonight's town hall will be not only informative, it will be probably very intriguing as well, because we have a powerful guest that has a great testimony, a story of recent experiences venturing into the political arena. He is well known. I'll introduce him in just a second, and we're going to have a great time in it. So just by way of housekeeping reminders, I want to remind you in this Facebook feed to continue to put in your questions, because we're going to talk to our guests back and forth about various issues for probably half an hour or so, and then we're going to turn it over to you to ask questions live of both of us, and we're just going to come at the cuff with these things and go one after the other with each other. And I think that's going to be extremely valuable. So with that said, I want to give you a couple of updates as well before we get going here. Number one is I wanted to update you about the app that we have. A lot of people ask where we're going to be, when's the next virtual town hall, when is the next event in person, and we have a lot of things coming up. So just in the near future, tomorrow night we'll be at in Sallisaw, Oklahoma at another OK Second Amendment meeting. Friday we'll be in Stillwater, Oklahoma for a meet and greet event, and then Saturday, May 7th, the day before Mother's Day, in Edmond, Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, this is probably the most important event in the history of the state of Oklahoma. Big deal. Make sure that you do not miss this, because it's significant for where we're going and what we're doing going forward, because we're bringing in Sheriff Richard Mack. Sheriff Mack, as many of you know, is a former Arizona sheriff who actually sued the federal government and won, believe it or not. And he sued the federal government under the Bill Clinton administration, and he's still alive to tell about it. Now, that's a miracle in itself. So he actually sued the Clinton administration under the guise that they could not tread upon the 10th Amendment. And Sheriff Mack was one of 7 sheriffs to do it. He led the way, and I think of that as extraordinary, one of only 7. So we need to have more sheriffs that understand the Constitution. So that's the purpose of the event on Saturday. Sheriff Mack will be training the sheriffs in Oklahoma that show up and that want to be trained in the Constitution, as well as the citizens. So we expect a big crowd. It's going to be at the Fairview Baptist Church in Edmond, Oklahoma, Saturday. We'll put the registration down the feed as well. The registration can be found at makeoklahomafreeagain.com, and you can go register there, and we want to see you there. We cannot wait for you to be there. That's going to be a powerful event. I'll be there. Some other Oklahoma First candidates and even America First candidates to be there as well, supporting Sheriff Mack and supporting these wonderful, courageous sheriffs, these law enforcement officers who give their lives in service for each state. So we have a lot of stuff coming up as well. Next week, there's many events. We pretty much have something every single night. I believe May 21st is a big event in Norman, Oklahoma. We're bringing in John Bevere, who's going to come in and do some speaking and blessing people and sharing powerful truths about why it's important to put godly persons and godly principles back into government. So lots of things coming up by way of updates. So again, download the app. You can find that there at Sherwood2022.com. That's our website. You can also go to the App Store at Sherwood 2022. If you go to the website, there will be an app link pop up. You can go straight there, but make sure you download this app and find out what's going on. I want you to download this app for a couple reasons. Number one, whether you live in Oklahoma or wherever you live in this country, man, I'm asking, and my wife's asking for your prayers. So when you see my non-smiling face on there, and I do smile a lot, but here it's a serious matter. I want you to pray for us, because this is not a small endeavor we've taken on. It's a big deal, and we're trying to do our best to step up and save this wonderful country and this wonderful state of Oklahoma. We can do that. Secondly, if you're supposed to to give and be involved, you need to. Please do. Do not be disobedient in that. Finally, in this app, and this is a big deal, make sure that you understand that the issues, we put them right here for you to see. Candidates that do not make their issues public and or that waffle on these issues should not be voted for. And that's the truth. You just cannot trust them. Aren't you tired of being lied to? Aren't you tired of being manipulated? Aren't you tired of the half speak, the double speak, the political babble? Make sure that you hold them accountable to what they say. This is a contract between you and them. We, the politicians that are the elected officials, work for you, the people. It's not the other way around. Remember the whole idea of tyranny, which we stand against. And by the way, on the website front page, never bow down to tyrants, defy them. Tyranny is when the people fear the government. Let's understand that. But when the government fears the people, that's called freedom, man. And that's what I'm talking about. And we have an amazing freedom fighter on with us tonight. Several months ago, I get a text message one day. Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I want to connect with them. I'm thinking, really? I know who this guy is. And I'm thinking, that's cool. So we talked on the phone that same day, I believe, and we had just a wonderful, wonderful time. He is a well-known personality. He's a comedian. He's a patriot. He's a fighter in the state of Texas. And I got to know Chad Prather as a human being, and we talked numerous times. I was able to get to know some of his staff and some of his producers, and what a heart for people. And then I found out that he was going to run for governor of the state of Texas, and I'm like, you go, boy. I loved it, man. So I was pumped up about that. So Chad has been so kind to take time out of his busy schedule to join us tonight right here in the virtual town hall. So Chad, welcome, man. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate you.
Dr. Sherwood, it is always a pleasure to be with you, my friend. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, come on, man. I appreciate you. And hey, so before we get going, you've had a lot of experiences recently, man. You went through the governor's race in Texas, and that was kind of a bloodbath, so to speak. A lot of stuff was going on. Get right into that, because I want people to know what you learned, both good and bad.
Well, looking back on that, I now refer to the governor's race as the primary race, I should say, as my worst, best experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it was a hard one. It was a tough battle, and it was a spiritual battle. We can talk about that. But, I got into the primary race in July of 2020. So it was a full 19 months of considering and campaigning and running and coming from a perspective of no political clout, no big backers, no donors, no consultants, no one owed me any favors, and there were certainly no hooks in me. I was a non-politician. I was the only person in the race who had not held some form of, or at least I should say legitimate candidate who had not run before or had been in any office ever before. So, people always ask me, they said, how'd you get into that? And I remind them I was in South Dakota on July 2nd, 2020, and I was sitting there. Don Trump Jr. was in the room there. And my phone goes off telling me that more mask mandates were being handed out by this governor in the state of Texas. More unilateral decisions of deeming people and their businesses non-essential. So I always joke. I say, I don't know if it's because I was having a glass of wine that night or sitting across from a Trump, but I went on Twitter and I announced that I was going to run for governor in 2022. And so a lot of people thought it was a joke, because obviously I come from a humor background and people were kind of waiting on the punchline. But I was serious, and we ran a good race. When you get into it, and this, Mark, once you get into it, you see the cesspool that's there. Donald Trump called it the swamp. It's worse than a swamp. Things live in the swamp. I don't know that there's anything good in big government. It's really, really bad. A lot of garbage, a lot of stink that's there. And as we got into this thing, the further we went, people began to realize I was serious. That I had some great issues that I was willing to talk about, and I'm proud of the fact that it's almost statistically impossible, especially in a place like Texas, to unseat the incumbent, right? Especially when he's running for his third term and he's been in government here in the state of Texas for 30 years. He's a career politician here. It's hard to unseat somebody that's sitting on $75 million in a campaign war chest. But I was real proud of it. We created what I like to call a ripple effect. We made a splash that I think is going to ripple throughout the years to come. I did exactly. I had the turnout exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to get 6 or 7% of the vote. We wound up with right at 4. A lot of crazy stuff that went on, but we developed so much support, opened up so many doors of opportunity to be able to speak to these issues and make those light bulbs come on and help people see what's really happening in the state of Texas. That's not good. It's really, really not good. People think of Texas as being this conservative bastion. And when you look at its overall citizens, it is. But when it comes to the government and what's happening here, it's not. But we brought tens of thousands of people out, got them involved in the primary election process. Heretofore, they'd never been involved in the primary. Many had never even been registered to vote. Some well up in age and had never voted in a state race. And so I was pretty proud of that. And we created enough of a momentous thing that a lot of people now are saying, well, surely you'll run again. I mean, we know you're going to run again. We want you to run again, which is interesting. But this particular run for me, this campaign was a conviction from God. I don't have any other, there's no way to describe it unless you use the vocabulary of the divine. So for me, this was a divine appointment to do this. And I promise you, I never want to attempt anything like that ever again unless God's on my side, right? Because this is a spiritual battle. It really is. When you do it for these reasons on the basis of conviction and you truly are wanting to set people free, we know that the enemy doesn't want people set free at all. And that's whether it's as a citizen or in the spiritual realm. When you're trying to get people back to freedom, you're going to be fought tooth and nail by all the enemies that exist. And one of the biggest ones is big government.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just keep in mind, folks, we are monitoring the feed right here on Facebook Live, Mark Sherwood for Governor page. I want you to begin to populate your questions right here for either Chad or myself, and we'll be glad to answer those things. We're going to go to those, a few minutes, but keep those coming in here. Share this feed. Share based upon how much you care. So if you care, share, and make sure you do that. That's super important. And I'll be watching the questions. Some are already coming in here. So go ahead and push the share button, push the likes, and let's keep those questions coming. Call somebody, get them on here if you want to have them ask a question of Chad in just a moment. And just by way, people can reach Chad at watchchad.com. Watchchad.com. Very good website. He's got
that is, Doc, I always say that is the most vain website there is. Watchchad.com. I mean, if there's not any vanity built into that, I don't know what is. But no, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, man. I've followed you for a long, long time, and you make me smile and you make me laugh at the same time. And I tell you, I was following you during your political run really closely. And I was telling you before we went live, I was able to communicate your message to numerous people in the Texas area, because we had a lot of patients we've dealt with down there over the years and still do. But one thing that came across clear, and I told you this earlier about your campaign, is you maintained the consistency of your convictions. You never wavered. And I appreciate and honor that. And you mentioned something a moment ago, and I want to dig a little bit deeper in it, about this idea of it being worse than a swamp. And just, kind of elaborate. And I don't think people understand that, on how treacherous it is and how maybe demonic it is. So talk about that.
Well, a swamp is an ecosystem. There's healthy things that grow there and live there. It's a necessary part of our environment. It really is. Big government is not. There's nothing healthy in big government. And I don't care if there's an R or a D next to their name. If they're big government Republicans or Democrats, they're part of the same problem. They're the flip side of the same coin. If things are operating to the point where we've gotten to government dependence, and we all have, let's face it, even those of us who call ourselves conservatives, if suddenly tomorrow the government was made smaller, many of us wouldn't know what to do with ourselves, because we've gotten to where we just think that the government's supposed to do these things, like deliver our packages and make our roads flat and fill in the potholes. And, we've accepted this this mediocre work done in the world around us, and we pay our taxes for them to be able to do that. Nothing's really done with excellence, and we've come to accept that as just the norm, and we've gotten dependent on that. We've gotten very mentally and spiritually and certainly governmentally obese. I always say that big government is like the blob that rolls through our life, and everything that it touches, it consumes, it eats it. You remember that old movie, you know, from the 50s with blobs pouring out of the theater, and as it consumes, it gets bigger and bigger, and it just rolls on and leaves people in their lives in its wake. This is something that we've got to get away from. I don't, you know, without a true miracle and without really, truly people, citizens who have a vested interest stepping up and getting involved in this like you're doing, we're not going to see this overturned. We're not going to see it. But things can happen. You know, we see what's going on with the Roe v. Wade thing right now. We know that these monumental nightmares that are happening in our country can be overturned when the pendulum swings so far. People are tired of being tyrannized. You alluded to that in your intro. You know, we've got to get it where the government is afraid of the people, that we hold them accountable. You send somebody to the State House or to Washington, D.C., they know that they are a representative elected official. They have delegated authority. They're not there to dictate to you. They go to represent the values and the priorities of the people who sent them. We've gotten so far away from that right now. So, you know, I look at a guy like Dr. Mark Sherwood and his wife, Michelle, precious people, choice servants, and I just believe honorable, good news people, right? You know, I reached out to you. As a friend, I've reached out to you and said, hey, I need help. I need help with health issues. And you were like right on it. You said, you know what? I'm going to send you some stuff. I'm going to send you some books. We're going to talk about this thing. You know, you've always been a person of your word. Whenever I reached out to you that first time, within moments you called me and said, let's talk. We spent, 30 minutes on the phone getting to know each other. We've done that numerous times. We've visited together. That's the type of thing that I want to know. That's the type of person that I want to know is going to represent me. It's not somebody who was recommended or someone who has the right resume or has the right referrals. I want to know that I have the right relationship with that person. And we've gotten to this point where people, they would come to me and they would say to me, whether it's on social media or send me messages or emails, and they'd say, well, you don't have any qualifications. Well, I'm from Texas. I've lived in the state at least 5 years, and I'm over 35 years of age. So I have all the qualifications that they ask for. I'm a citizen of the state. What they mean is I'm not a career politician. I've never run for office. I'm not a lawyer of some kind. And we got to get away from that mindset. We really do. The longer we continue to put the quote unquote qualified people in there, we're going to continue having this big government nightmare. Nothing lives there. It's not a good ecosystem. It's not healthy. Whenever this is all about rules and values and regulations and laws, look, we know you're a believer. I'm a believer. You've read your Old Testament. You know that system of economy under God was not good. It was all about the law, you know, and the law was set up to kill and destroy. And so now we think that everything is about legalism and people just knowing their policy and all these things. Well, most of these people couldn't find their way out of a one-bedroom apartment in the middle of the night if the building was on fire, much less be able to help you navigate where you live. You know, I knew that Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Mike Pence, none of those people are coming to my neighborhood. They're not coming to my neighborhood. I got to get back to a point where I have the ability to govern myself, govern my family, make decisions that are right for me. I've got to be able to govern my neighborhood, govern my community, govern my state, and then we'll get to the federal and national level. But right now, that's all been taken away from people. They lost that ability to govern themselves. We feel out of control. How many times do we hear people say, well, I would vote for you, but I don't think my vote's going to count anyway? Yeah. They don't trust the institutions anymore. They don't trust the integrity of elections or of the vote. They don't trust. We see the leaked memo from the Supreme Court. That is judicial treason to use, or judicial insurrection is what Governor Ron DeSantis called it. That's seditious. That's very bad. So when you have things like that happening on a monumental landmark level like this, it's never happened in history. People stop trusting in the institutions of the American government. We got to change that. We've got to get back to the point where we're no longer using the Constitution as a doormat or toilet paper. One of the things I campaigned on, Mark, is I said, we got to make Texas a constitutional sanctuary state. And what that means is, if it doesn't fly by the letters of the Constitution, then it doesn't do business on Texas soil. We've gotten so far off from that what our founding fathers established was so simple, but yet so simply profound. It was almost like their writings were inspired in a way, not like the Holy Writ of Scripture, but there was divine providence, and there still is divine providence. And to the degree that we can maintain that humble attitudes towards grace, I think that God will continue to direct us. But right now we've gotten to a point where we thumb our nose at God. We've relied on big government. We bow down at the altar of me, myself, and I. We've elevated man to godhood. And so we're just going to go it alone. The Apostle Peter said that God gives grace to the humble, but he resists the proud. We've gotten very proud. We've got to humble ourselves again. The writer of Chronicles certainly said that, echoed that when he said, we've got to humble ourselves and pray and turn from our wicked ways. And then will God hear from heaven and he'll heal our lands. Humility goes a long way. And that is in the antithesis of what big government is these days.
I appreciate that. And let's talk about the idea, because you mentioned something very key, and I think people have lost complete sight of this. The idea of self-government, the idea of governing your backyard, your family, your city, your state. We put so much darned attention on Washington. It's almost like there's a sexiness of being in Washington, but it really doesn't fix anything. It doesn't matter who you put there. What matters is our republic is lost if the idea of the 10th Amendment, the self-governance of the rights of the people, the powers that be, are not maintained by the people, Chad. And so Texas, interestingly enough, has the 10th largest economy in the world or something like that. You guys in Texas could be energy, agriculturally, economically independent, couldn't you?
Yeah, we could, militarily as well.
Yep.
There's so many things we could do. We've got a larger economy than Russia. Which is significant when you really start thinking about, Texas is a world superpower. It's a global superpower. The thing about that, and I'll back up a little bit on what you said there. You use a key phrase there, republic. A republic, that's what our founding fathers had in mind. They quoted the Baron de Montesquieu quite extensively. De Montesquieu was a certainly a genius when it came to the idea of republics. And he wrote a lot about Rome. And he said, that the reason Rome stopped being a republic and ultimately became an empire is because they weren't able to govern themselves on city-state levels. So when you consider the 10th Amendment was echoing that. It puts the power takes the power out of the federal government's hand, decentralizes and puts it back in the hands of the state. This is why Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that she was opposed to Roe v. Wade. She was against, that ruling because it took the power away from the states to be able to determine, how they wanted to be run and put it in the hands of the federal government. My point being, we have never truly exercised the 10th Amendment in the United States. Back to Montesquieu, he felt like if you didn't break down your governments into smaller state-run lower areas, that if you had a big landmass and you tried to run it centrally, that it was going to turn into a dictatorship or ultimately an empire. Our founding fathers wanted to get rid of that. They did not want that to even be a temptation. Well, that's exactly what we've done. And I think in many ways, our founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves if they saw what we're doing, because we've never truly utilized the 10th Amendment. This Roe v. Wade thing in this leaked SCOTUS report or ruling, this gives us an opportunity, maybe for one of the first significant times in our history as a nation, to exercise the 10th Amendment and say it's going to be down to the states to determine what's best for them. So you're right. I have to be able to govern myself. If I can't govern myself, we might as well be living in China, quite honestly, to use an extreme example. We saw what happened when the trucker convoy was happening in Canada. We saw Justin Trudeau's reaction there. But Trudeau was also the same guy in 2013 who said he admired China's form of government because they could basically snap their fingers and do what they wanted to do. We are getting to a point where we're taking for granted our freedoms. Our Bill of Rights was established 1791. We've had it for a long time. One of the reasons the Canada was so fresh with protest, their charter, which doesn't even go as far as our Bill of Rights, but their charter was ratified, I think, in 1981 or 1982. So it's still very fresh for them. But we've had freedom for so long that we're starting to take it for granted. And as I do, freedom comes with great responsibility. It's hard work to keep freedom. It's hard work to keep a republic because self-government is hard. I have to do the stuff. I've got to do the work. I got to put in the long hours and the sweat to make sure that, my home and my community, my city, my state is taken care of. The big government's going to always fight against that. One of the reasons why, as you're finding out, as you've seen firsthand, as I did as well, that big government, that spirit of big government, it does exist. It is going to fight against people like you and me. It's going to try to silence our voices. It's going to try to make it harder and harder for us. And they're going to stack the deck against us every chance they get.
I appreciate that. And, as everyone knows, this idea of self-government crosses all areas of life: physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, financial. I'm supposed to work for a living, pay my bills, show up. If you don't work, you don't eat. Nobody's going to teach me how to be healthy. I've got to do that. Bring me what I need. I got to go get it. I got to go work by the sweat of my brow. But within that, there is a blessing. Is it hard? Yes, sir. It's hard. But do we have an opportunity to do that, to maintain the greatest thing God gives us with his choice? Yes, we do. And that's what I find fascinating about people, Chad, and I think you nailed it, is we've had this so long we forgot what it was. And now maybe it's to the point, hopefully, where the last couple of years of these unconstitutional mandates, etc., you mentioned it in the intro, the lockdowns, nonsense, all that stuff, essential, non-essential. Maybe it's bringing to people's attention. Do you see a groundswell that's sort of rising up from people that are starting to go, wait a minute, maybe we did lose our rights. Can we get those back? Do you see that going on right now?
I see a grassroots movement. I don't think enough people are awake yet. We didn't see very many grassroots candidates do very well in the state of Texas, although there were a lot of them. And I've yet to find many people across the state who spoke well of the big government establishment that we have here, but nonetheless, they tend to hold on to power. I do believe in the theory of the pendulum. That pendulum can only swing so far before it springs back and it comes. We are really stretched right now. I mean, we have really gone off the deep end spiritually, mentally, emotionally. We see, I call them the protesters. They're out in the streets. They're always up in arms about something. Doc, I tell you, I wish I could pay you to go to the gym for me, right? Like, just you work out, and then tomorrow morning I'll feel a little bit of the pain from your workout. But then, in 6 months I'll look like you, right? But it doesn't work like that. I can't pay you my tax dollars to go to the gym to make me healthy, to make me look good in clothing or out of clothing, however it may be. I can't do that. Well, there's a spiritual principle there as well in regards to, how we look at government. We think that we can pay the government the money and they're going to take care of our best interests. They're not. They don't love us. They don't care about us. The government does not love you. If you believe the government loves you, stop paying them and watch what they do to you. Big media doesn't love you. Social media doesn't love you. Big tech, they don't love you. But yet we keep bowing down to them. We're seeing that. Our public school system doesn't love our kids, and I catch a lot of grief for that, but they don't. They don't. The curriculum, the teachers' unions, those things, the powers that be, they don't love our teachers. Our teachers are being victimized as well. Disney they don't love your family. They don't. So all of these things that we're out here catering to, we think that we can just keep giving them money and they're going to have our best interests at heart. They don't. So I hope people are waking up. I think they are. But I pray that it's not going to be too late. Yeah. We're in dangerous ground, economically, financially. When you've got a government that says we're just going to, they believe in deficit and debt. They believe that they can just print trillions of more in cash with nothing to back it, and that's okay because they truly do believe in modern monetary theory, which says deficits and debt are good. That you just keep printing the money with no foundation behind it to add any worth to it. We're getting closer and closer to the ESG scores where you get rid of your FICA score or your credit score. Now you have a social score, how you treat the earth, how you treat, social governments and your social justice and the, environmentalism and these kind of things. And they're going to determine how you do business on that. We're seeing more and more of that happening with our big corporations already. It's going to happen to us as well if we don't do something about it. Mm-hmm. So, the government doesn't like us. We've established that. They will penalize us if we go against the grain. We've seen that, everything from the crazy stuff that's come out from January 6th to name your crazy whatever it may be. The government, they'll hold you without cause. They'll shut you down. They'll deem you non-essential. They'll mandate you. They'll cause you to stay at home. They'll take away your livelihood. They'll tell you you're sick when you're not even sick. They will force you to get medication that you don't need, don't want, shouldn't have. So we're starting to see these things. So I just pray that people are waking up, seeing it, and realize that there are candidates out there like you, like yourself, who don't have to be doing this, but you're doing it because you've seen it. You've heard the call, as Isaiah said, here I am, send me, here am I, send me. And you're doing that. You're going, and you are an apostle in sorts. And I know, that's one of those things that, we talk about biblical apostles, right? From the Greek apostolos, one who was sent away from. You're willing to leave home with a message to go and proclaim that message. Well, that happens in the government too. It should. Somebody who truly goes with a mission and a conviction and a vision and a passion for doing what they need to do. We've got to align ourselves. And I don't just mean give lip service. I mean, we got to give our money. Yep. People have got to donate to your campaign. They have got to contribute there. They've got to make investments. And here's the thing, Mark, even if they plan on voting on another person in a primary, you know what? If they still believe your message, they still need to put the money there. They still need to invest in that, because these primaries are so healthy for the political process. They're so healthy for the political process. It keeps the powers that be in check. It keeps them accountable. Again, people said to me, they said, well, you can't win. That's not a reason to support or not support me. That's right. You support the message. You support the person that's out there doing it to the best of your ability. And then you let the chips fall where they may. And you never know. You might just be surprised at the revolutionary, impactful way things change.
Well, you bring up a very good point. When we heard the call, as you did, it was just about being obedient to the call. It wasn't about winning and losing. It was about being obedient to the call, to show God that you were like, okay, you want me to go? I'm going to go. Now, Chad, you and I talked about one thing several months ago, and it's very much back in the news right now, and you referenced it much again a moment ago, the leaked SCOTUS report about potentially having this majority opinion to admit there was a horrible mistake in judgment and error, erroneous interpretation of the Constitution.
Right.
And they're going to punt it back to the states, right? And so the states have a chance now to, and they've always had a chance, regardless of that. We understand that. Regardless of that erroneous interpretation, they've always had the opportunity to either promote abortion or end it, whichever one. Mm-hmm. And they've always, it's been there in front of us. At this point in time now, and you and I are on the same page about this abolition of abortion. I want you to talk about your stance on that and why, and then I want you to give your opinion on, just hypothetically, do you believe any states will do that?
Well, I'm a small government guy. Obviously, I'm a conservative first and foremost, but I am a conservative because I was always first and foremost pro-life. So I'm 49 years old. I went to the University of Georgia. I had an opportunity to speak out consistently for things that I truly believed in, writing for the campus newspaper, speaking on campus. One of my favorite topics of debate consistently on campus was the fight for life, specifically those who are innocent and do not have a voice, can't speak for themselves. This is the worship of Moloch. This goes back to the days of Ezekiel, where God says, you have sacrificed my children to false gods. And this is what's happening. The altar we're placing our children on in modern America is the altar of convenience. We know that. It is a form of birth control. We can argue that 97 and 98% of all abortions that happen in America are done for the purpose of big business. It was also built, Planned Parenthood was built on the purpose of eugenics by Margaret Sanger. Mm-hmm. It's still evidenced when Planned Parenthood's 85% of their clinics are within walking distance of a Black urban community. We know that this target community. We know that it targets minorities. We know that it targets socioeconomic political underdogs, if you will, in our society. This is a horrible, horrible sin. It's a mar that's on here, and whereas we can't hear the cry of the blood of the innocents, but I believe God does. And so I've always wanted to be on that hill. If that was the one I was going to die on, that was going to be the one I was going to die on. So, right. To your question, if we get back to states' rights, yes, I do believe that there will be states like Texas. Texas did pass the heartbeat bill. We were pushing for the abolition of abortion in the state of Texas. I don't know how many states are actually going to do that. We'll have to see. But, the overturning of Roe v. Wade does not make abortion illegal in the United States of America. It doesn't take away your right to go out and murder your baby in a clinic, while soft music plays and they try to make you as comfortable as possible. You still have the ability to go out and do that atrocious thing. But it's going to make it more and more inconvenient. Now, one of the trends that I like, Doc, is over the last few years, I'd say the last 20 years maybe, we've seen a trend where more and more women are choosing to keep their baby. We're seeing a decline in the abortion rates. I'm very thankful for that. I believe that's an answer to prayer. I believe that's for people who are spiritual and culture warriors who have been speaking out on behalf of life to make people understand. And that, I just think that the stigma of pregnancy maybe is not as strong as it once was in American culture, when we were buckling our Bible belts a little bit tight, and making it a little more of a thing of shame. I think we've created an atmosphere where people, have the freedom to give birth without that sense of shame. And I'm thankful for that in that regards. But I do pray states will stand up. Look, I said on my program tonight, the Chad Prather show on Blaze, I said, if you still want to abort your baby, you can still go to states where, the taxes are high and they burn down their cities. And, places like Chicago where, they have a crazy lesbian mayor that looks like a Star Wars character. But, may the fourth be with you, right? This is May 4th. Yeah. So, you can still go to these wackadoodle, crazy, fringe, lunatic, lefty, progressive places and do what you want to do. But, I have to believe that places like Texas and a solid red Oklahoma is going to be a sanctuary for the unborn. And I pray that those places are. And I know with men and women who have, an opportunity to speak into that and are given that platform like yourself, are going to do more and more in that battle, because this matters. This is not a war against women. The left is waging a war against women. The left is waging a war against women. When you can put a biological male in a collegiate pool to swim on a national level against biological females and win, and then you praise that. When Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner can be named Woman of the Year, that's not right. So many of these different things that we're excusing. I always say that we laugh at it, we launder it, we pander it, we put it out there, and then we legalize it, and it's all okay. These are the kind of things we've got to get back away from. And realize that the true war on women is happening from the progressive left. I believe women want to be safe. I believe women want to be secure. I believe women want to be free. I believe women want to have opportunity. I believe women want to be protected and taken care of. That doesn't mean that they're weak, but it does mean that I think that that's what they desire. And I think that God created women to be those things, to have an opportunity to flourish. I was talking with a good friend today who said, if you look at Christ and the church, the bridegroom and the bride, Christ redeemed his church, his bride, and gave her this amazing opportunity to be this most creative community vessel on the planet in all of human history. So much freedom, that being free, that redemption process brings. I believe that the relationship of men and women in America's got to get back to a place where we're truly setting each other free. We're not doing that right now.
No,
we're not doing that. We've made that a bad thing. When you talk about toxic masculinity, when you talk about masculinizing the feminine, as we're seeing with this transgender stuff that's happening in collegiate sports, competitive sports, and all across the board, man, we have missed the pattern in a big way, Mark. We really have. And I'm unapologetic about these things. I really am. I know it's not politically correct, but I don't care. I'm at a point, and I always have been, if people can go back 10 years and listen to me talk, I've never changed on these things. I don't believe in toxic masculinity. I believe if it's toxic, it's not masculine. If it's masculine, it's not toxic. And so on down the line, it rubs the cat the wrong way. But I say turn the cat around and let it get right with the Lord. But, hey, at the end of the day, man, when you get the pattern out of whack, we're never going to get anything straight. We got to protect these children. We really do. And I pray that states will step up through all of this and do what they need to do.
Well, I can guarantee if elected next governor of Oklahoma, we will do that. I've made that commitment within the first 30 days, and I've got a plan to make that happen. And we'll be that first state if nobody else beats us to it. And interestingly enough, that'll be the 50-year anniversary of that Roe v. Wade nonsense. And so I believe the year of Jubilee is right on point. So it's right on time, man. And, just remind you folks, put your questions in here. There's some coming in that I can't wait to ask you. As a reminder, Chad's website, watchchad.com, his show, Chad Prather Show on the Blaze. I've been on there. It's a cool show. So make sure you support this guy. And as he said clearly, he learned a lot and he made a dent. And he made a dent that is affecting all of us. So, if nothing else, you need to reach out to him and say thank you for representing truth and honor and integrity and bringing manhood, true manhood, that servanthood, and true love of God and honor of the Constitution back again. Chad, there's a couple of questions here. I want to kind of get into these because they're pretty fascinating. One of them, and I found this interesting. I'm going to go back to it here. It's from Daryl. He got a chance to talk to Alan West and ask him if he became governor, would he put Chad as lieutenant governor? There you go. I guess, do you remember that? Was there any comment on that one?
Well, the thing about Texas is they're two independent races, right? So the governor runs for governor, the lieutenant governor candidate runs for lieutenant governor. In the state of Texas, you don't get to appoint those. It'd be fun. And I appreciate Alan West. I certainly appreciate his voice. I've known Alan for a lot of years, and that was one of the things that I was pretty proud of when we ran that race. We had about 17 or 18 candidate forums between myself and him and Don Huffines, where we were together discussing the issues, and we truly ran a gentleman's race. We did. Because we weren't fighting against each other. We were after what was best for the state of Texas. But if that were the opportunity in a world, I could certainly see myself definitely working with Colonel West in a big way. He's a good guy, really is.
That's good. Here's one that's pretty interesting. This is from Devin. He says he loves you, by the way. So he says, we Okies are in the same fight with Stitt that you were with Abbott. What would you do differently and share with Mark so that he can get rid of Stitt? I think using the words, I'm just phrasing the question here. So I think you get the gist of what's happening now. So that question's for you. I'm all ears.
Well, we've seen it happen over and over again. I think people start out with a good intention. Government has a way of corrupting. You and I were talking, there's a weird temptation that happens. There's a weird temptation that happens whenever you're running for office or when you get in office. You want to be successful, and you want to listen to certain people, and you want to please everybody, and you can't. And sometimes your convictions get watered down, and over time, that quest for power, that quest for legacy, if you will, sometimes even unfortunately, the quest for money, it becomes too big of a temptation to handle. And big government is a corrupting thing. It really is. The Texas Tribune called Greg Abbott the most powerful governor in the history of the state of Texas. And the reason is not only because of his longevity and being there, but because he gotten really good. He is really good at sidestepping the legislative process and doing exactly what he wants to do without any sense of accountability, whether it's shut down the state or, the ERCOT nightmare where we lost our power and people died back in February of last year, or the year before, I should say. And it's going to happen regardless. We don't have term limits in the state of Texas, so that doesn't help us very much in regards to this. Mm-hmm. But the biggest issue there, and to his question, I love him too, is I said to myself, just like I would say to you, and you know this, because you got a handle on this, no matter where you go, if you're elected, you have to maintain a sense of accountability. You got to remain accountable to the people who put you there, but you've also got to build that network of accountability around you. Those people who will say to you, no, Dr. Sherwood, that's not the right thing you need to do. You're getting out of bounds in that regard. Now people say, well, how do we know you won't ever be bought out? I said, because I love being politically incorrect. You just can't buy that off of me. I love calling things as they are. You do the same thing. And I appreciate that so much about your voice, your wife's voice, especially. Our wives have that gift, don't they? But you have that ability to just speak into those things. And but we've got to make sure that accountability is there. We really do, because if we truly believe this is a spiritual battle, we can't let that temptation get bigger than what we are as individuals. We got to have a team of people around us. Even Jesus did. We certainly do.
It's a good point. We were talking before we went live about that temptation, and here's what it is, folks. Quite honestly, it's money, fame, power, influence, and people, all of us have this desire in us to be liked, to be appreciated, to be honored, to be well thought of, to be recognized. We all have that need, but it's a trap of sorts. Not that those things are bad, but it is a trap of sorts, because you can get so much into that you lose touch with reality. And then you begin to grade people on a level of importance, and you only talk to people that you think can do something for you, instead of looking at Jesus, who was looking at the little widow's mite, and that got his attention. The little person that gave a lot versus the big person that had a name, and I find that very, very important. And I'll put you on the spot now, Chad, just in a cool way. I know your response what will be, but once elected, if God puts me there and I start acting like an idiot, will you call me and call me out on that?
I'm going to send you a text message. If you don't respond, then I'm calling.
You better. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Now, folks, this man is going to do what he says, so I appreciate that.
Well, and Dr. Sherwood, here's the thing. Again, we start out with the best of intentions, right? Yeah. There are things that go into this, whether it's campaigning or even holding office, that the general public, most people, unless you're involved with it, you'll have no idea. The attacks that come, the vitriol, the hate, the death threats. I mean, it is the pure silliness. I remember I used to tell a story about a missionary that came back from India. He had been there for 30 years, and they said, "Were you more scared about the lions or the tigers, or or whether there was the big snakes?" He said, "No, it was the mosquitoes and the gnats. Those were the biggest enemy, right?" And so that's true when you're running for office as well. There's a lot of things that come your way, and the buzzing, it gets incessant sometimes. I don't know how you're probably running it far better than I did, but there were times when I just, I thought, I'd cuss if I thought it would help. Yeah. Because you just get frustrated. You just really get frustrated. So it's the temptation is real. But when and I encourage people to pray for you. I do. And that's another investment that's there. I will say this, Mark, and you can hear it from the things I'm saying. And I've said this in numerous platforms at this point. The biggest thing that happened to me through this campaign was I was drawn closer to God. I was drawn closer to my Father in heaven because I realized how weak I am as a man. I really did. And it'll do that if you've got the right heart, whereas Pharaoh's heart got hard when exposed to God, Moses' heart got soft. And I hope mine got soft. I really do. But yeah, it's a tough battle.
Well, I can tell you this, just people listening, I know everything I say will be recorded, memorialized for the duration of time. This has definitely softened my heart. I've cried a lot of times, been at the end of my rope a lot of days. A lot of days I've just, welled up in tears and thinking, can I do this anymore, Lord? Yeah. Well, he does something to you. He'll empower you to keep on going, because you think about those little people, little grandmas that come up with you and, can you help me? Or someone come up to you and just say, can I hug you? And you don't know their name, but it doesn't matter, because I look at it like there might be angels that God sent on this earth to really encourage me. And I don't want to miss that. The person, and I hope people remember this, and I'm speaking purely from what's inside my heart right now. When you lose track of representing the people and start devaluing people, you've lost track and the ability to relate to people. You're no longer fit for any sort of leadership position at all. But you remember who you are and where you came from, knowing you put your pants on the same way as everybody else, and you're not better than anybody else. Just God calls you to a different function, and we work together. Then you serve him with dignity and power. And I appreciate you sharing that, Chad, because you're right, man. There have been a lot of days. I know even when, a while back, you probably remember I'd send you a text message every once in a while, say, dude, I'm praying for you, man.
Yeah, and I value that highly.
Just like it's overwhelming, man, sometimes when you're tired, you're busy, and the phone, you got a gajillion messages to return. You're just like, I don't want to talk to one more person, but you do anyway. But I think you noticed this, and I did too. I've noticed that the more the establishment gets in there, the less they'll talk to people. They don't talk to the people. They don't talk to the voters anymore. Right. They become disconnected, and that is like where we are right now. This disconnection. It's the monarchs and the peasants. Really. Yeah. It's sad, and so.
This is a fantastic point, though, Mark. Again, I try to take leadership examples from Scripture. We read the Sermon on the Mount. We see these images of Jesus standing up and speaking to the thousands. But in Matthew chapter 6, verse 1, it says, and when he was seated, When he was seated, he began to speak, and this is what he said. So he's speaking to all these people. He sat down to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's sometimes, so many times, you know, it's someone, a great preacher generations ago said that it's possible for a leader to get so far out in front of the people he's leading that they now perceive him as the enemy. We get so far out in front that the vision from the people we're trying to serve and lead gets blurred, and so we got to get away from that. We really do.
I've said it before. Back in my law enforcement career, Chad, I was on the SWAT team for a number of years, and one of my jobs for a period of time was on what was called the entry team, and you know, that's a team that would go into a structure to you know, deal with a hostage situation, or maybe armed and barricaded of some sort, or maybe even a high risk search warrant. And my job in part was to grab the shield and go in first. You know, I guess, I don't know if it's because I was too stupid to say no or big enough to carry the shield or what, but I would go.
You're a big dude.
Yeah, right, both. But I know full well that my job, and we were trained to, you know, I was supposed to lead the team in, and if I were to go down, everybody else was supposed to not stop and care for me, but to keep on going. Right? And that's a very important point you just brought up. And this is what we have to do. We have to find leaders like this, right, that step up, but realize the leaders that step up like this are not doing it by themselves. They're saying, I'll go cut those bushes first. I'll go in that door first. Right. You need to be right there on my backside coming on in with me, you know, and that's the key point. Chad, a couple more questions came in here for you that I'll ask you. What's next for you? You know, you did a really good job, very respectable, honorable with the gubernatorial primary in Texas. What's next for you?
Well, you know, I've made a living. I've been fortunate to make a living running my mouth. So, of course, we've got the show on Blaze. They're gracious enough to continue putting up with me. The Chad Prather show is a lot of fun, very therapeutic. You know, I've been able to use humor and music over the years to make a point, and we'll continue doing that. You know, we're coming up, what we were talking about, we're going to try to do something together, but I've got a show in Shawnee, June 17th, I think it is, Friday night. We come up there, you know, we try to do some shows and get out, and we'll bring we use the music to have fun, but also make a point, and the humor as well. And so, you know, we'll continue doing those things. I don't think that I have been released from my assignment politically, if that makes sense. I don't know what that entails or what that looks like. I just don't feel the ability to say never again. You kind of like, you know, these pro athletes that retire and then they're back next season. We always knew they were coming back. I'm a little hesitant to say I'm all done because what I've seen I can't unsee, and I'm really concerned for the state of our nation.
Yeah, I appreciate and honor your transparency there, because that was one of my questions, you know, that people are asking, you know, will you run again? Well, what's next for you? Chad, where do you see, and this is maybe a final question for something like you, and somebody makes a point here, and I want to tell you, this is from Deanna, and I know her. She's an amazing human being. She says, Chad, run for something else. We need men like you. So I wanted you to know that. And I know Deanna,
thank you.
An amazing person, just recently moved to Oklahoma, right? So she moved there from Texas. Go figure. So
she got out.
Yeah, she got out. She realized there was life north of the Red River.
you get Mark Sherwood in as governor. That might just be a wise move. I'm telling you.
Come on, man. I tell you. Chad, as we go forward, where do you see this next election cycle? What do you see happening? I know you can't predict the future, but from your experience, what do you see happening?
Well, okay, obviously we're heading into the midterms. Everybody's predicting a big red wave because, let's face it, Joe Biden doesn't know what day it is, much less what room he's in the House. Yeah. We're expecting that. People are suffering. They really are. Inflation is horrible. People can't put gas in their car. They can't. Pack of bacon's $12 at the grocery store. This has gotten ridiculous. It really has. They're going to pull out everything they can. You know, whether it was the Ukraine thing that's been going on, now this Roe v. Wade thing, the COVID, trying to end that, everything they can do to distract you and try to make the right look like this big bunch of evil people. I predict there's going to be a surge, quote unquote surge, in COVID cases again come September, because they're going to try to get back to issuing mail-in ballots and try to get people back at home. I hope I'm wrong in that, but it's going to get ugly. We've seen some real ugly things in the last 6 months, but it's going to get uglier. But I want to encourage people to think of themselves as an algorithm, and we have to overwhelm their algorithms by showing up and voting at the ballot box. They can only turn that knob so far. And they are turning the knob. We saw it in 2016. We saw it in 2020. I don't care what anybody says. We saw it. They just didn't turn the knob high enough for Hillary Clinton. They thought she had it under control. They can only turn that knob so far. This isn't Spinal Tap. They can't go to 11, okay? So we've got to overwhelm the ballot boxes. We got to make sure that we show up and do that. And I think if we do that, we will see some significant change. And I pray to God it will be some non-politician, grassroots conservatives holding office, by this time in 23.
Yeah, and somebody asked me, I'll answer this question publicly. How are we doing in the polls? We're strong number 2 right now and rising, right behind the incumbent. The incumbent is losing ground and declining in popularity. So feel good about it. We're just going to watch God move the Red Sea out of the way, right?
There you go.
Trust him. So feel good about where we are. Chad, before we go, and then before I sign up with some closing remarks, 30 seconds. What would you say to the people listening here from Oklahoma, predominantly, or maybe abroad?
God was gracious enough to make America the most powerful, most significant government experiment in the history of the human race. We have experienced unprecedented freedom and liberty. We understand it like no one else in history has. To the degree that we can embrace God's providence and truly let him take us into the future, I think we will continue to see great strides in that regard by remembering, the Constitution wasn't written to keep you safe or to keep you healthy. It was written to keep you free. And to the degree that we can maintain liberty, maintain freedom, love each other, pray for each other, and truly pray for our country and humble ourselves, as I alluded to earlier, I think we could see America return to a level of greatness, and stop listening to the voices, the ideologies. There's a book back there on that table. I wrote it, came out last year, called "Am I Crazy?" It's a book I wrote. It says an unapologetic patriot takes on the insanity of today's woke world. And I keep saying the insane asylums are empty. They're walking the street and holding office, folks. We got to pray those folks out of there, get good men and women in office. And I wholeheartedly believe in you, Mark Sherwood. You're my friend, but you're my brother, and I'm thankful for you, thankful for your voice, and I believe there's a big future ahead for Oklahoma as they embrace you and your candidacy.
Well, Chad, I'm grateful, and before I give a few remarks, I want to encourage the listeners to absolutely go to watchchad.com. Prove he's crazy by buying his book. Am I crazy? Do that. I'm serious, because you'll be blessed. I'm going to go buy me a copy as soon as we get off tonight. I promise you that. And watch the Chad Prather Show on the Blaze. You'll be blessed by that. He is humorous, but he's also full of awesome wisdom nuggets, and he'll make you laugh. Laughter is good medicine for the soul, but also some truth is also very good medicine for the soul. Folks, I want to thank you for all you do and who you are and how much you stand up and how much you've supported us over the course of time. It has been extraordinary. We came from late last summer. The staff would say, "Are you? Never heard of you." Grew, I know they're there, but they have no chance. Which grew to eventually they're there, they make a lot of noise, ignore them. Which grew to, well, they're there, we probably ought at least make a present. Which now grew to, they're there, they're scaring us, and we need to go to work. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you so much for sharing our app. Make sure you do that. That is, again, Sherwood 2022. Here, you go to the website, Sherwood22.com. As Chad said, you got to support candidates, man. You got to get out and get busy. You got to vote, and you got to support them. And you need to support them with finances and time, too, because it's important. If you want your country back, man, stand together with some true patriots, true conservatives who love God and love you. And we're going to continue to love you. I love you so much. My wife loves you so much. We would not do this job if we didn't love you. We do not need this job. I promise you that. We're doing this because we are commanded and we're being obedient. And we are willing to give our lives, if need be, for the cause of freedom. As Patrick Henry said on March 20th, 1775, I believe, he said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Liberty and the freedoms we have are worth dying for. He said that before the Bill of Rights. He said that before the Declaration of Independence. He said that before the Constitution. But there was something in him that drove him. And that something in him that drives him is driving men like Chad Prather. It's driving men like Mark Sherwood. That's myself. It's driving my wife. It's driving people like you to get out there and make a difference. You got to fight for that liberty. You got to fight for that freedom, because freedom is not a spectator sport. It's something you must get involved in and become part of the solution. Get in the game. Make a difference. Don't complain like I did for years and not do anything. Get in there right now. We have no time to waste. Use today as the greatest gift of all. That's why today is called the present. So I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for joining us tonight. Stay tuned for the next event. Remember the May 7th event coming up Saturday. Chad and I are going to talk. Maybe we can get him to come to Oklahoma. So stay tuned. If you'd like him to come here sometime, put that in the feed too, and I'll make sure he gets that comment. All right. So we look forward to that. So on behalf of Chad and myself, once again, we want to wish you the absolute best night. We want to tell you that out of our hearts, may God richly bless you and your families. May he bless this wonderful state of Oklahoma. And yes, may he bless the wonderful folks of Texas. But most of all, may he bless the whole United States of America. Remember, God's people in America chose God. God will not turn his back on us. We must repent, humble ourselves, turn from our wicked ways, seek his face, and he will heal our land. And that, for your reference, is 2 Chronicles 7:14. So may God bless you all, and good night.
We have up is down, left is right, bad is good, confusion. And God is not the author of confusion.
God wants to bless America, but it starts with his people first, repenting and the ending of sin.
We have been in ministry the last 20 years. It was in prayer that the Lord began to convict me to run for office. And so I'm excited about Dr. Sherwood stepping up to the plate.
This is a man after God's own heart, who will not compromise with the devil.
He's bold, he's courageous.
I'm Nick Vujicic.
Warren Hamilton.
I'm Jake Merrick.
And I endorse
enthusiastically
Dr. Mark Sherwood
as governor of Oklahoma.
The ending of slavery happened with total abolishing of it. We must see this as well for abortion. It's America's Holocaust.
We still have abortions in Oklahoma. How can you be pro-life and have one abortion? Why not stop it right now? And I make a commitment right now that I'm going to do everything I can to completely abolish abortion in the state of Oklahoma within the first 30 days of office.
Vaccine mandates that are being rolled out right now are entirely unconstitutional and unbiblical. Every state that's a member of these United States, that's a member of our union, said we'll abide by the Constitution. That's why we don't tinker with it too much.
So I believe the word mandate doesn't equate to law. I am a big believer in the 10th Amendment, and that means state sovereignty. I would propose that every single business owner in Oklahoma that's affected by that ridiculous mandate push back and say no, because they don't own you. The federal government does not own you. We need to own that amendment, understand what it is, and not be afraid to push back.
We have to understand where critical race theory came from. Obviously, it comes from the Marxist handbook. And if we preach this and promote this, we end up a Marxist nation. It is not social justice. It is not anti-racism. It's actually racism in its purest form. The very thing Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, we're not going to allow this to be taught where we judge by the color of our skin.
There's one race. It's called the human race. I'm not going to apologize for being white. I'm not even white. I don't even know what I am. Kids in school need to be taught how to live life. Right now, we're teaching them theories about how to hate. That's not education, that's brainwashing. We will not do that under my administration. We will fine every school that does that, and if they don't like it, they can take their education and find another state that will accept that nonsense. People all need to be healed. Our state needs to be healed, our land needs to be healed, the economy needs to be healed, and our confidence needs to be healed. Our hope needs to be restored. God has gifted us as healers. We know that we're called to not just heal people individually like we do, but we know now we're called to heal a group of people called the state of Oklahoma. My name is Mark Sherwood, and I'm running for governor of the state of Oklahoma.